Okay, good morning, everybody. I hope all of you are doing well. Okay, it's great to see you guys. We are already at 159. I hope all of you are doing well, yeah. Just give me a couple of minutes as I set up my device. In the meantime, you guys can, you know, uh, get your necessary stuff. Just give me a minute. Okay, awesome. Okay, we're already up to 165 people and the number keeps on increasing. That's good. Okay, good morning, everybody. Good morning to all of you who are texting me good morning. Even those of you who have not texted me good morning, good morning. Okay, so how's everything on your side here? I hope all of you are doing well. I am kind of getting bored, I should say. Not that much because I don't have a lot of time on my hand. But yes, it does sometimes gets boring. Okay. I hope that all of you are utilizing the time that you guys have on hand. Anushin, so in the class, as I mentioned, in the last class also, so I'll be covering both boards as well as NEET in my classes, right? So in the same class, you will get the benefit of both of them, right? Okay. Again, any other questions from anybody else? So how are you guys utilizing your time on hand? Because I think you guys only have 2.5 hours of classes, right, every day. So what are you guys doing to keep yourself busy? I hope it involves a lot of studying because you guys have less than a year now. Okay, Ankita, I am posting notes in the groups here. I am posting notes in the group. So you can download the notes from there in the group. Okay. And so who will teach us biotechnology? I'm not sure yet. Yeah, I will be taking the entire unit of reproduction. Biotechnology we'll see as we'll move forward. Vijay Lakshmi, it will be soon available in the drive. I have not yet uploaded the notes in the drive, right? So, but I have put it in the group. Okay. I will be uploading the notes in the drive maybe in a day or so. Okay, it's just that I'm slightly busy right now in the moment. So, but I'll upload it soon. Do not worry about that. Okay. Any other questions from anybody else? If not, then we'll start with the class. Any other question? Okay. Chalo yaar. I hope all of you are doing well here. Okay. Thank you. So let's start with the class. So Anushri, you want me to go deeply? Beta, the point is, you know, there is no end to biology, right? If I really want to, I can teach you reproduction of bachelor's and master's level, something that I have studied. But you know, the main goal of our class is to make sure that you guys do well in your boards as well as NEET. So I will be covering topics that are asked in your boards as well as NEET, right? Because there is more stuff, right? But you don't need that stuff in your exam. And in the end, our main goal is what? To make sure that you guys do well in your exam, right? So I will be covering topics that are relevant to your exams. Okay. But if you have any questions from stuff that I've not taught also, you can stay back after the class and I will be more than happy to answer your questions. Okay. Chalo. So I'll start with the class then. Okay, Rohan, both boards and competitive will be covered in the class. Yeah. So just make sure that you guys are paying attention. Both of them will be covered. Okay. Okay, so we are doing the chapter reproduction in organisms. This is lecture 2, right? We are already done with your lecture 1, right? So now we'll be focusing on lecture 2. So before we start with today's lecture, I just wanted to do a quick recap of what we studied in the previous class, right? So some of you might have missed the previous class, which was on Tuesday. We'll do a quick revision. So on Tuesday, we started off with what exactly is life. Right, we saw that life is nothing but a movie which stars Jake Gyllenhaal. Okay, no, life. So we looked at the definition of life, right, from the biological perspective point of view. Then we talked about lifespan. We discussed lifespan of different organisms, right? And after that, we talked about reproduction. What is the importance of reproduction? And then we looked at asexual reproduction and sexual reproduction, and we started with asexual reproduction, right? Okay, so asexual reproduction, in that we started off with your fission. In fission, we did your binary fission, multiple fission. What was the third type of fission that we did? Can anybody tell me if you guys remember? What was the third type of fission that we did in Tuesday's class? Lavanya, the notes are there in the group. Okay, what was the third type of, so the third type of fission that we did was your plasmotomy, right? Okay, so binary fission. In binary fission, what happens is, in binary fission, one parent gives rise to two daughter cells, right? In multiple fission, one parent cell gives rise to multiple daughter cells, and that process is usually preceded by formation of a cyst around the parent cell, and the process is known as incestation. And plasmotomy takes place in multinucleate parent. Okay, it takes place in multinucleate parent, where it divides into daughter cells, and then daughter cells undergo karyogamy, multiple karyogamy, to resume or to return to the same number of nucleus, right? In binary fission, we looked at your simple binary fission or irregular binary fission, we looked at transverse binary fission, and we looked at longitudinal binary fission. Okay. So before I start any of my online class, okay, what I do is that I go over a couple of recap questions, okay, just to see how much of you guys remember from last class. Okay, so I will be throwing up a poll. I hope all of you are aware with the poll feature. Okay, so there's a question in front of you. Okay, read the question, think of an option. Do not tell me your option in the chat. I will throw up a poll. The poll will appear on your screen. Then you guys can mark the appropriate option. Okay, so the first question that I have for you guys is, a few statements describing certain features of reproduction are given below. What are the features given? Gametic fusion takes place, transfer of genetic material takes place, reduction division takes place. Okay, progeny have some resemblance with parents. Now, you have to select those statements which are true for both sexual as well as asexual reproduction. Okay, and based on that, you have to select a correct option. So you have option A, in which first and second statements are there. Option B, in which second and third statement are there. Option C, in which second and fourth statement are there. Option D, first and third statement are there. Okay, I hope all of you have understood the question. What you have to do, you have to select those statements which are true for both asexual as well as sexual reproduction. Okay, so I'll throw up the poll. Let me know. Okay, I'll throw up the poll in 20 seconds. I'll throw up the poll in 20 seconds. Okay, and then you guys can tell me what the option is. Okay, on the poll. Do not tell me your option in the chat. Okay, because in chat all of you start texting simultaneously, so I lose track of who texted what. Okay. Okay, chalo. I'll throw up the poll. Then you guys can tell me what do you guys think is the correct option. Let's see. Okay, so the poll is now live on your screen. You guys can mark the option that you guys think is absolutely correct. Okay, please mark something, because that gives me an idea what percentage of the class has understood what we did in the last class. Okay, what we did in the last lecture. Okay, so far 52% of you have voted. Arun, Shavana, there's no need to tell me in the chat. Yeah, just mark it there in the poll. That would really help me. 60% you have voted. 15 seconds and I'll close off the poll. 15 seconds and I'll close off the poll. Make sure that you vote in the poll. Okay. 10 seconds and I'll close the poll. Okay. 5 seconds. 3, 2, 1, and we'll stop. Okay. So according to you guys, 64% of you think C is the correct option. Then second most popular option was option B. Let's see. Let's look at this question. So what does the question say? Okay. Now, so let's look at the most, familiar option. So it says that reduction division takes place. What is reduction division? Reduction division is nothing but meiosis. We know that meiosis takes place only during sexual reproduction. It does not take place during asexual reproduction. That means what? This cannot be possible. This cannot be possible for both asexual and sexual reproduction. That means statement number 3 has been eliminated. So that means what? You can eliminate two options which contain statement number 3. You can eliminate this option and you can eliminate this option. Okay. Now you are left with two options, option A and option C. In both of them, statement number 2 is there. That means statement number 2 is definitely Correct, that is transfer of genetic material takes place. That is true, right? Whether it's asexual or sexual, transfer of genetic material will take place. Now, the question is to figure out of first and fourth, which one is true. Now, the first one says that gametic fusion takes place. Now, if you remember, gametic fusion does not take place in asexual reproduction. It is a characteristic of the sexual reproduction. So this one has also been eliminated, and this is the correct option. So the correct option here is option C. Okay, this is a question from your NCERT exemplar. Okay, this is your question from your NCERT exemplar. Okay, Pritish, so it says, so the statement 4 means that at least some resemblance will be there with the parents. It could be exact copy also, like they are exact copies, but at least some resemblance will be there with the parents also. So that is why statement 4 is correct. Okay. Okay, now let's look at one more question, then we'll start with the lecture. Okay, so the next question that you guys have is assertion and reasoning based question. Okay, assertion and reasoning based question. Anushri, how is second statement correct? Beta, transfer of genetic material always takes place, right? DNA gets replicated and then it is transferred. Okay, so the question is assertion and reason. The assertion is asexual reproduction involves formation of clones of an organism. Then reason is clones are morphologically and genetically similar individuals. So you have to select one of the 4 options. I hope all of you are familiar with your assertion and reasoning based question. Okay, you guys are not in 11th standard anymore, where I have to introduce you guys to assertion and reasoning based question. I hope all of you know what are assertion and reasoning based questions. Okay, chalo, I'll give you guys 10 seconds and I'll throw up the poll. 10 seconds and then the poll will be there on your screen. Okay, chalo, let's see. Okay, the poll is there on your screen now. चलो बेटा जल्दी से कर दो. Let's see. बड़ी मुश्किल है खोया मेरा Ten seconds, yeah, 10 seconds and I'll close the poll. Make sure you get your votes in. Okay, 5 seconds. 3, 2, 1, and we'll stop. Okay, so I'll share the results with you guys so that you guys can see तुम लोगों ने क्या गुल खिलाए हैं. So according to you guys, A is the correct option. Then 25% of you have voted with B. C, 12 of you have voted, that is 7%, right? Okay, so now let's look at this. So whenever you have an assertion and reasoning based question, the first thing that you're supposed to do is check whether both the statements are correct or not. So let's look at the first statement. Asexual reproduction involves formation of clones of an organism. Statement is true. We studied that yesterday, that identical copies are produced, right? Let's look at the second one. Clones are morphologically and genetically similar individuals. That is also true, right? Clones are exact copies. So both the statements are true. That means you can eliminate option D and option C. Now you're left with option A and option B, right? So this is a trick that I've told to my students whom I have taught in 11th standard. This is a trick for those of you whom I have not taught. Remember this. Whenever you have an assertion and reasoning based question, once you have checked, whether both the statements are true or not, and if both the statements are true, then kya karo? Read the assertion as a question, right? So the assertion was asexual reproduction involves formations of clone of an organism. Ask why. Why in asexual reproduction there is formation of clone? What do you think is the reason? Is the second statement the reason? Is the second statement the reason? If I ask you why in asexual reproduction you have formation of clones, the reason for that is because their mitosis takes place and not meiosis, right? Their mitosis takes place, so the genetic identity of an organism is conserved. So here the reason is not the correct explanation. Okay, so the correct option is your option B, which only 25% of you went with. Okay, those of you who went with option B, give me a yes so that I can see how many who all went with option B. Okay, so the option B is the correct option. Okay, so whenever you have an okay, यहाँ पे अब यार 55 लोगों ने yes कर दिया, वहां पे सिर्फ 45 लोगों ने yes वो वोट किया था, 45 लोगों ने वोट किया था वहां पे. So obviously 11 of you are lying. I don't know who those 12 people are. ठीक है, because only 45 people voted for option B. Anyway, so whenever you have an assertion and reasoning based question, once you have established that both the statements are correct, read the first question, read the first statement as a question. Read the first statement as a question, right? So why do asexual reproduction produce clones? The reason for that is because their mitosis takes place. So exact copies are produced. Reason is true, but it is not explaining why clones are produced in asexual reproduction, right? So the correct option is B, not A, which most of you went with. I hope this is now clear to everybody. I hope this is now clear to everybody. Now, those of you, because majority of the people went with A, I hope those of you went with A. Now this is absolutely clear to you guys. Okay, check it. So what is it that we are going to study today? So today we'll continue with our asexual reproduction. Okay, we will start with budding. Okay, after budding we'll do spore formation, and then we will do half of vegetative propagation. We will do half of vegetative propagation. Vegetative propagation, there are 6 sub methods. Okay, we will do 3 of them. 3 of them we'll do tomorrow. Okay, and most probably in next couple of classes I will finish off the chapter. Okay, let's start with our first topic of the day. Then the first topic of the day is your budding. Okay, again something that you guys have studied in your 10th standard. Okay, so what is budding? Okay, in budding, a daughter individual is formed from a small part or a bud arising from parent body. So what happens is, if you remember that classic diagram of Hydra that you guys had in 10th standard, right? So from the parent body there is a small outgrowth. From the parent body there is a small outgrowth. And that outgrowth is known as bud. And this process is known as budding. Okay, this process is known as budding. Okay, Advait, yes, it is due to rapid cell division in that particular part of the body. This was mentioned in your 10th class textbook. Okay, take it. Now we will study 2 types of budding: budding in yeast and budding in animals. Okay, they're slightly different. Some similarities are there, some differences are also there. Okay, so let's talk about budding in yeast, something that all of you guys would know, right? Budding in yeast. So in yeast, what happens is an outgrowth develops on one side of the cell. What happens is that after that the nucleus divides mitotically. Very important that the nucleus divides mitotically, and one nucleus shifts into the outgrowth, which is now called bud. Okay, so as you can see, there is formation of bud, and then the nucleus also divides, and then there is a bud with the nucleus. Okay, and the division of the nucleus is mitotic in nature. Okay, after that it grows in size and gets separated and matures into new yeast organism. So it remains attached to the parent body as long as it is incapable of producing for its own food. Once it is capable of producing its own food, then it detaches from the parent body and is capable of independent existence. So Advait, in a single parent you can see multiple buds also at the same time. Okay, so there is no limitation that on a parent body you will only see one bud. Okay, you can see multiple bud on the same parent body also. Okay, Bhumika wants me to explain the whole thing again. I'll explain it again. So in budding, what happens is there is development of an outgrowth on one side of the cell. That is the first step. Once the outgrowth takes place, then the nucleus divides mitotically, right? The nucleus divides mitotically, not meiotically, and the divided nucleus gets shifted into the outgrowth, which is now called bud. Bud. After that, it increases in size, gets separated and matures into a new yeast organism. It remains attached to the parent body, okay, as long as it is incapable of providing for its own food. Once it can provide for its own nourishment, it detaches from the parent body. Okay, at the end of the class, okay, remind me to tell you guys about an experiment called Experiment Hope. Okay, that is something I want to discuss. Okay, just remind me at the end of the class, any one of you, please. Okay, it's very interesting. I think you guys will like that. Okay, so Dhanush has asked, after budding, parent cell will die or not? Okay, no, Dhanush. So that is a difference between, you know, budding and your fission. Okay, so the difference is that in budding, okay, the parent cell survives even after giving rise to a young one, while in fission, the parent cell ceases to exist once new daughter cells have been given rise to. Okay, okay, so that was your budding in yeast. That was your budding in yeast. Prajwal asked, why not meiosis? The reason no meiosis, because beta, this is asexual mode of reproduction. In asexual mode of reproduction, okay, we do not see meiosis, because in meiosis the number of chromosomes reduces, right? If you remember, it is known as reductional division. Plus there is crossing over, which leads to production of more variation. Okay, take it. So that was your budding in yeast. Now let's look at budding in animals. So budding in animals is of three types. Budding in animals is of three types: exogenous budding, which is known as external budding; endogenous budding, which is known as internal budding; and strobilation. Okay, so the thing is, the diagram of these are given in a textbook, but they have not explained them very well. So make sure that you pay attention so that you can understand what is the difference between these three types of budding that we see in animals. So there is exogenous budding, which is also known as external budding; endogenous budding, which is known as internal budding; and strobilation. Okay, so let's move forward. Let's move with the first type of budding, which is your external budding, something that all of you guys might have seen and read about also, right? A diagram that I have picked up straight from your NCERT textbook of 10th standard. Okay, if at any point you guys cannot understand anything, let me know in the chat. I will help you guys with it. If you want me to repeat a particular point, again, let me know in the chat. Okay, okay. So what is exogenous budding or external budding? Which, as the name suggests, okay, the budding, the growth of the outgrowth is external on the surface of the body. Okay, so it grows on the outside. Exogenous means external, so the growth of the bud is on the outside of the body. The growth of the bud is on the outside of the body. That is what happens in exogenous budding. After that, what happens is the bud may split away from the parent and take up independent existence, as in Hydra. So as you can see in Hydra, after one point it detaches from the parent body. So in Hydra, what happens is, after exogenous budding, it detaches. Or in some cases, it may remain attached to the parent body and become a member of the colony, as in Cycon. Become a member of the colony, as in Cycon. Can anybody tell me which phylum Cycon belongs to? Can anybody tell me which phylum Cycon belongs to? Do you guys remember which phylum Cycon belongs to? So Vijay Lakshmi, okay, take care. So it's clear that you guys remember. So they belong to Porifera, right? So what is exogenous budding? Thank you very much. Pata lag gaya. Okay. So exogenous budding is what? The bud grows on the outside of the parent body. Once the bud is mature, it can either detach from the parent body, as it happens in Hydra, right? It detaches, it is separate now. Or it can remain attached to the parent body also. How does it look like? This is what it looks like. So if you look at it, this is a colony of Cycon, and you see all these are, okay, all these are buds. All these are buds that are now attached to the parent body, okay, and they form a colony. Okay, so this is what they can look like. Okay, this is what they can look like. You have two options. Either they can remain attached to the parent body, as in Cycon, as you can see in this figure, or they can detach from the parent body they get detached from the parent body, as in Hydra. Okay, okay. A couple of you want me to repeat the thing again. I'll just repeat it once again quickly. Okay, then I'll move forward. So what is exogenous budding? In exogenous budding, the bud grows on the outside. The bud grows on the outside of the parent body. Once it has grown from the outside of the body, it can detach from the parent body, as it happens in Hydra. or it can remain attached to the parent body as it happens in cycon and form a particular colony. Okay, so Anushri, are these lines from the NCERT? Anushri, no. So in your NCERT, they have just mentioned budding is there, right? You see formation of buds, but they have not mentioned what exactly is it, what are the different types of budding and all that. Okay. Preksha, yes, in cycon, the bud remains attached to the parent body and forms a colony. Okay. Take care. So that was your exogenous budding. Now let's move to your endogenous budding, which is also known as your internal budding. Okay. So endogenous or internal budding, as the name suggests, the buds form on the inside. The buds form on the inside. Okay. So where does it take place? It takes place in freshwater sponges like Spongilla. It takes place in freshwater sponges like Spongilla and a few marine sponges. Okay. So what happens is buds are formed within the parent's body. Buds are formed within the parent's body. Okay. So if you look at it, this is a parent body, and all these cells that you see, in the middle, these are your buds. So buds are forming within the parent body. Buds are forming within the parent body, and these buds are called internal buds or gemmules. So in your textbook, they mention the word gemmules, but what exactly they are, that is not what they mentioned. Okay. So the internal buds are known as gemmules. They are formed within the parent's body. What are the internal buds made up of? The internal buds are made up of small group of cells called archaeocytes. Okay, if you look at it, they have labeled the cells archaeocytes here. So internal buds are made up of what? They are made up of small cells called archaeocytes. They are made up of small cells called archaeocytes. Okay, so gemmules consist of small group of cells called archaeocytes, which are protected by a protective coat. And that protective coat contains what? Spicules. That protective coat contains what? Spicules. So the function of spicules is to protect the internal buds. Okay. So I'll repeat the endogenous budding again. So endogenous budding is also internal budding. So what happens in internal budding is, so buds are formed within the parent's body. These buds are called what? These buds are called internal buds or gemmules Okay, they are made up of, the internal buds or gemmules are made up of cells called archaeocytes. They are made up of cells called archaeocytes, and they are protected by a protective coat, which is made up of spicules. So the function of spicules is to protect the internal buds. So what happens is, when the buds are ready to go out, then the micropyle opens. And the buds are ready to go out into the external environment. So when the buds are ready to go out, when the conditions are favorable, then the micropyle open and the buds come out of the parent's body and give rise to new individuals. Okay, so that is your endogenous budding. I hope this is clear to everybody. Okay, so we are done with exogenous budding, we are done with endogenous budding. Now let's look at the third type of budding, which is known as strawbulation. थोड़ा सा confusing है, but this is related to your something that you studied in 11th standard. Okay, okay. So Harshit is asking, will the parents survive? Yes, beta, it will. Okay, so Chandrasekhar is asking difference between endogenous budding and multiple fission. Beta, again, the difference is that in multiple fission, the parent body ceases to exist once it has given rise to those smaller cells, while in your endogenous budding, the parent cell continues to live on, right? So that those are the two differences. Plus the other difference is the type of organisms that it takes place, right? Endogenous budding usually takes place in your sponges, while multiple fission we see, as we saw in the other day, it can take place in amoeba or it can take place in plasmodium. Okay, I hope Chandrasekhar, I answered your question. Okay, now let's look at strawbulation. Okay, so what is strawbulation? So strawbulation is repeated formation of similar segments by a process of budding, and this is called strawbulation. Do not worry, there's a figure on the next slide which will help you understand it better. Abhi ke liye bas samjho what is strawbulation. So strawbulation is formation of repeated segments. Their formation of repeated segments. Okay, so the segmented body in which you see this segment is called strobila, and each of those segments are called Epeira. Okay, each of those segments are called Epeira. Okay, again, I don't know how to exactly pronounce that, but I think Epeira is the correct pronunciation. Okay, so so what is strobulation? You see formation of segments. You see formation of segments. Okay, so a segmented body of the parent is called strobila, and each of those segments are called Epeira larva. Okay, they are called Epeira larva. Okay, so what happens is this Epeira larva breaks at intervals, grow, and in due course of time change into jellyfishes. Right? If you remember, we studied of alternation of generation in jellyfishes. Right? If you remember, polyp phase and medulla phase. Right? So this is what it exactly looks like. Okay, I'll just show you what it looks like. So this is a strobila. This is a strobila. Okay, so if you look at a strobila, you see all these segmented bodies. Okay, so this is a segmented body. This is a, so you see all these segmented bodies. So these segmented bodies are your Epeira larva. These segmented bodies are your Epeira larva. And what happens is that then the Epeira breaks off. Okay, and it matures and gives rise to an adult medusa or a jellyfish, as that all of you know. Okay, so this is what a strobila is. This is your strobila. So strobila is the segmented body, and all those segments that you see on a strobila are your Epeira larva, and then these Epeira detach from the parent and then they give rise to your jellyfish or your adult medusa phase. So are the three types of budding clear to everybody? Just give me a yes or no. Are the three types of budding clear to everybody? Give me a yes or no. Are the three types of budding clear to everybody? So you have exogenous budding, which is on the outside. You have endogenous budding, which is on the inside. Then you have strobulation, in which there is development of segments. The entire segmented body is called strobila. Okay, the entire segmented body is called strobila, and those individual segments are called your Epeira. Okay, ठीक है. So it seems like some of you are confused about strobulation. ठीक है. देखो, layman terms में, so this is your parent body. Okay, this is your parent body. So in parent body, you will see development of these segments. So once you see development of these segments, then the entire body will be known as your strobila. Then the entire body will be known as your strobila. Okay? And these individual segments that you will see, these individual segments are your Epeira. These individual segments are your Epeira. And then what happens is the Epeira breaks off. Like this part will break off. Okay, and then it will mature into your jellyfish that all of you see, or the adult medusa phase. Okay, so now I hope this strobulation is clear to everybody. Okay, Harsh, just stay back after the class, I'll explain it again. Okay, so now I hope this is now clear to everybody. Strobulation, those of you who did not understand it the first time. Okay, okay, let's move forward. So these are the three types of budding that you guys see. Okay, chalo, let's move forward now. So the next one is fragmentation. The next one is fragmentation. Again, something that you guys have studied in 10th standard. So what happens in fragmentation is parent body breaks into two or more pieces called fragments. Parent body breaks into two or more pieces called fragments. Each fragment develops into an individual. Each fragment develops into an individual. Example is sponges, sea anemones, that is coelentrates, and echinoderms. Right? There is nothing new here. Everything that you guys studied in 10th standard. So in fragmentation, the parent body divides into multiple fragments or smaller parts, and then these smaller parts grow into a new individual. Just remember the example: sponges, sea anemones, and echinoderms. Okay, can you guys tell me what is this figure of? Can you guys tell me what is the figure that I have taken for fragmentation here? Which organism is this figure of? Can anybody tell me which organism is this figure of? So as you guys have pointed it out, so this is your Spirogyra. This is your Spirogyra. And can you guys tell me what is the ribbon-like structure that you are seeing within Spirogyra? Can anybody tell me what is the ribbon-like structure that we are seeing in Spirogyra? What is the ribbon-like structure that we are seeing in Spirogyra? So that is your chloroplast. Okay, so Spirogyra have ribbon-like chloroplast. So the ribbon-like structure that you see, that is your chloroplast. Okay, awesome. So that was your fragmentation. अब fragmentation से थोड़ा मिलता जुलता ही है regeneration. Okay, so can anybody tell me which movie is this scene from? I don't know whether you guys have seen it or not. Can anybody tell me which movie is this scene from? Can you guys tell me? So I've taken a scene from a movie. Okay, so Ravi has identified it. Chetan has also identified it. Samruddhi has also identified it. Can anybody tell me? Okay, ठीक है. So it seems like that. Okay, I thought that तुम लोगों ने शायद देखा नहीं होगा. So this scene is from The Amazing Spider-Man, which I think was released in 2012 or 2011. I don't remember correctly, right? So before the Spider-Man that you have right now in Marvel Universe, there was a different Spider-Man, right? So in that, the villain was your Dr. Lizard, right? Dr. Kurt Connors. So what happened to Dr. Kurt Connors was he was without an arm. He was without an arm, right? So he wanted to get a new arm. So what he does is he does some genetic thing, which is obviously not possible, which is impossible, and he mixes the lizard's DNA with his own DNA, right? And he regrows his arm, but later on he turns into a lizard, right? So he was the villain of the movie. Okay, so anything, I thought that you guys should just know that. So regeneration is what? Regeneration is the regrowth in the injured region. Regrowth in the injured region. Now regeneration is of two types. Regeneration is of two types: morphollaxis and epimorphosis. Regeneration is of two types: morphollaxis and epimorphosis. Okay, take it. So again, what was showed in that movie? That was trans-species genetic is not possible. You cannot mix a human DNA with a lizard DNA. Okay, if it was possible, फिर तो चमत्कार ही हो जाता. Okay, चलो. So let's see what are those two types of regeneration. So the first one is morphollaxis. Okay, first one is morphollaxis. So in morphollaxis, what happens is the whole body regrows from a small fragment. The whole body regrows from a small fragment. Okay, so this type of reproduction is found in sponges, hydra, planaria, and etc. And this is very important. You guys should know this. Regeneration was first discovered in hydra by Abraham Tremblay in 1740. So Abraham Tremblay was the first one to observe regeneration in hydra in 1740. So what is morphollaxis? Morphollaxis is when the whole body regrows from a small fragment. So this is where the confusion comes in, right? This is where the confusion comes in. Okay, so that's what is the difference between then morphollaxis and fragmentation, right? Because if you look at it, in both of them, a small fragment is giving rise to a entire new fragment, right? Entire new organism, right? So you can use it interchangeably, but one key difference that I've seen is usually morphollaxis is not the preferred mode of reproduction. For example, can you guys tell me what is the organism that I've shown? What is the organism that I've showed in the figure? Can you guys tell me? So that is your, what organism is that? That is your planaria. That is your planaria, right? So planaria shows regeneration, but does planaria show another mode of reproduction? Can anybody tell me what is the other mode of reproduction? What is the other mode of reproduction that planaria exhibits? Can anybody tell me what is the other mode of planaria that other mode of reproduction that planaria exhibits apart from, you know, regeneration? So you guys are saying fragmentation, some are saying fission. Any other mode of reproduction that we see? Okay, right? So one key difference that at least I feel there is that, you know, organisms do not depend on morphollaxis for reproducing, right? That is something they can do if they are cut into pieces, right? For example, planaria has alternate mode of reproduction which it undergoes. But if you cut a planaria, then it can undergo morphollaxis also. Okay, that is it. One key difference that I feel is there between fragmentation and regeneration. In fragmentation, what happens is the organism automatically divides into smaller fragments once it has matured enough. While regeneration or morphollaxis, to be more specific, does not happen on its own. Make sure that you remember the name Abraham Tremblay. Okay, so as you can see in this figure, so the planaria was cut, and within 14 days, they saw that the planaria was able to regrow into a new organism. Okay, so actually you can do this experiment. You can do this experiment at your home also, right? If you ever get your hands on planaria, which would be very difficult for you guys, you can cut a planaria with a blade actually, right? And you can see that if you provide it with proper conditions, it will grow back soon. Okay, so I'll just explain what is morphollaxis. So morphollaxis is regrowth of the whole body, regrowth of the whole body from small fragment, from a small fragment. It is found in sponges, hydra, planaria, etc. Okay, it was first discovered in hydra by Abraham Tremblay. Okay, that was your morphollaxis. That was your morphollaxis. The next is your epimorphosis. The next is your epimorphosis. So what is epimorphosis? Epimorphosis is the replacement of lost body parts. Something that we commonly see, right? Epimorphosis is the replacement of lost body parts. Okay, and in them you do not see growth of new individuals from the cut body parts. Only the body part that has been cut will regrow, right? So it is of two types. Okay, epimorphosis is of two types. Reparative, okay, reparative regeneration, in which only damaged tissues can be regenerated. This is something that you see in human body also. When your skin gets cut, okay, when there is an injury, it heals, right? It heals over time. So that is reparative regeneration. That is reparative regeneration. And then there is restorative regeneration, in which body parts can redevelop. Example is broken tail of a wall lizard, right? Here you can see the tail of the lizard is regrowing. So your epimorphosis is of two types. Your epimorphosis is of two types. Reparative regeneration, in which what happens in reparative regeneration, certain damaged tissues can be regenerated. Certain damaged tissues can be regenerated. Okay. In restorative what happens is the body parts can recover. But again, in epimorphosis, no new adult formation takes place. No new adult formation take place. But hair and nails are dead cells here. Okay, actually hair that you see, they are dead cells here. They are alive as long as they're within the skin. As soon as they pop out, they're dead. Okay. Okay. So this is your reparative regeneration. Okay. So in humans, what we see is reparative regeneration. Okay. Okay. Let's move forward now. So next is your sporulation or spore formation. Next is sporulation or spore formation. Okay. Chandrakala asked, sir, if the organism grows by regeneration, then it will never die. But in asexual reproduction, especially in those organisms which undergo stuff like fission, you can say that they're immortal. If you remember, we discussed this yesterday also, right? If the parent divides to give rise to identical copies of themselves, you can say that they're never dying. They're just increasing in number. Lavanya, difference between epimorphosis and morphollaxis. In morphollaxis, new individuals can form from broken parts. In epimorphosis, only broken parts can be recovered. Okay. Beta, reparative regeneration is regeneration of damaged tissues. Only tissues can be regenerated. Organ pura ka pura nahi aayega. Right. So if your tissues in the hand are damaged, right, injury ho gaya hai, you can replace that. Okay, you can replace that. Okay. Kriti, no, yes. So you can say that epimorphosis is not a mode of reproduction, but since it is a subtopic of regeneration, and regeneration is a mode of reproduction, that is why we are studying here. If you look at it, technically epimorphosis is not a mode of reproduction because it does not give rise to new individuals. But since epimorphosis is a subcategory of regeneration, I have to mention it. Okay. I hope I cleared your doubt, Kriti. Now, let's look at sporulation. Let's look at sporulation. Okay. Okay. So sporulation is, so first, what are spores? So spores are minute, single-celled, thick or thin-walled propagules. Okay. So spores are minute, single-celled. Again, very important. Make sure that you remember single-celled and walled structures, which are also known as propagules. But if you cut off the head of a lizard, it will not regrow. The lizard will die. Okay. Now, next is they are dispersive structures which also form new individuals. Right. They disperse from the parent body and then they give rise to new individuals. Motile spores are called zoospores. Okay. So all these spores that can travel, that are motile, that show movement, they are known as zoospores. They are known as zoospores, while non-motile spores have various names: sporangiospores, conidia, odia, etc., depending on from where they are being produced and who is producing them. ठीक है? Okay, you might have studied spores in your second chapter also when we are talking about fungi, kingdom fungi, right? So we'll just look at the different categories of spores that we have. So what is the thing that you have to remember? Non-motile spores can have multiple names such as sporangiospores, conidia, oidia, etc. While motile spores are known as zoospores. Abhishek asked, dispersive structures means what? Beta, dispersive structures means something that can disperse. Disperse का मतलब क्या होता है? जैसे असेंबली के बाद बोलते हैं ना disperse, right? You सब अपने अपने काम में लग जाते हैं. You get distributed, right? अब I don't know how to say it in Hindi. So dispersive structures means something that can disperse. They were spread, right? Spread हो जाना, right? Thank you very much, Jagriti. Scatter, or as Preksha says, scatter. Okay. So that is what dispersive structures mean, to scatter. Okay, so now let's look at your different types of spores. Let's look at your different types of spores. So the first spores that we have is zoospores, and this is what zoospores look like. This is what zoospores look like. Okay, so zoospores have flagella that helps them in movement, right? They have whip-like structures that help them in movement. So they are special kind of motile and flagellate spores produced inside the zoosporangia. What is zoosporangia? Zoosporangia is the structure in which zoospores are produced. Very important feature that you remember. They are generally naked, that is, they are generally without cell wall. They are generally naked, that is, generally they are without cell wall. Okay, two things, they are three things. Motile. Why are they motile? Because of the presence of flagella, and then they are without cell wall usually. There are obviously some exceptions, but usually they are without cell wall. Okay, flagella helps them to swim in aquatic habitat. So what is the function of flagella? The flagella helps them in swimming in aquatic habitat. Now, if you guys remember, the flagella of prokaryote is made up of flagellin. The flagella of eukaryote is made up of microtubules. Can you guys tell me what would the flagella of zoospore be made up of? Can you guys tell me what would the flagella of zoospore be made up of, right? Flagella of prokaryote is flagellin, flagella of eukaryotes is microtubules, right, which is made up of the protein tubulin, right? So can you guys tell me what would the flagella of zoospore made up of? Would it be tubulin or would it be flagellin? Would it be tubulin or would it be flagellin? What would it be made up of? Okay, so it seems like people are confused. Some are saying flagellin, some are saying tubulin. Chalo beta, pata karke batana, okay? Go over it and let me know, okay? A small homework for you guys to identify what is the flagella of zoospores made up of. Is it tubulin or is it flagellin? Okay, okay. Again, important is remembering the examples. What are the examples? So fungi like phycomycetes, right? I hope you remember your fungi. So example is, okay, Achila, then you have Sporangina, then you have Albioga, and algae such as Chlamydomonas and Ulothrix. Please remember the examples of your different types of spores. So zoospores are produced in usually phycomycetes, and then in algae like Chlamydomonas and Ulothrix. Okay, so three important features: motile, they contain flagella, are usually without cell wall. They're present in phycomycetes and algae like Chlamydomonas and Ulothrix. Okay, let's move forward now. That was your zoospores. The next one that we have is conidia. So conidia is formed in penicillium and other ascomycetes. So conidia is formed in penicillium and other ascomycetes. They are non-motile. Remember, only zoospores are motile, every other spores are non-motile. They can be produced singly also, right? They can be produced singly also. For example, if you look at it, here they are being produced singly, right? They can be produced singly also or in chains, as you see here. They can be produced singly also or in chains by constriction of the tip of special hyphal branch called conidiophores. So these branches that you see, these branches are known as conidiophores. So these are branches of your hyphae. I hope all of you remember hyphae, right? What is hyphae here? I hope all of you remember hyphae. What is hyphae when it comes to fungi? What is hyphae? बता दो जल्दी से, what is hyphae? What is hyphae? So somebody is saying structural unit of fungi. So you can say hyphae are filament-like structures. Hyphae are filament-like structures, thread-like structures, right? Which are found in your fungi. Okay. So hyphae gives rise to mycelium, or mycelium gives rise to hyphae. Hyphae gives rise to mycelium, or mycelium gives rise to hyphae. I just want to see how much you guys remember here. Hyphae gives rise to mycelium, or mycelium gives rise to hyphae. Okay. So hyphae gives rise to mycelium. Okay, hyphae gives rise to mycelium. याद रखना, ठीक है? Okay, so conidia can be singly produced, or they can be formed in chains. Okay, they can be formed in chains by constriction of special hyphal branch called conidiophores. Okay, they are produced exogenously. That is, for example, zoospores are being produced in special structures known as zoosporangia. Here they are not being produced in any special structure. They are not being produced inside something. Okay, they are produced exogenously. That is, they are being produced on the surface. Special branches of hyphae which are known as conidiophores. But a constriction means dabana kisi ko, right? Constrict karna, to press something. Okay, so that is your conidia. Okay, now let's move to the next one, which is your chlamydospores. Now what are chlamydospores? They are thick-walled spores directly produced from hyphal cells. A very important property of chlamydospores is they store reserve food material and are capable of withstanding unfavorable conditions for a long period of time. Okay, so what is special about chlamydospores? That they store reserve food material, okay, which helps them in surviving unfavorable conditions for a long time. What are the examples? The examples are Rhizopus and Agaricus, which is the mushroom that you see. Okay, now the chlamydospores that you can see, they can be present at the end of a hyphae. In that case, they are known as terminal chlamydospores. If they are present at the end of the hyphae. If they are present, beta, hyphal cell means cell of the hyphae. Hyphal cells means cell of the hyphae. Okay, and if they are present within the hyphae, so for example here they are present within the hyphae, then they are known as intercalary chlamydospores. Okay, so chlamydospores are of two types: terminal chlamydospores and intercalary chlamydospores. Terminal chlamydospores are found at the end of hyphae. Intercalary chlamydospores are found in the middle of the hyphae. They contain extra reserve food material which helps them in surviving long, arduous condition. Okay, so that was your chlamydospores. Let's move to the last one that we have, which is your oidia. Okay, sorry, after oidia there is one more. Okay, so in this case what happens is the hyphae breaks into numerous small thin-walled fragments. Okay, what happens is the hyphae breaks into small thin-walled fragments. So as you can see here and here, the hyphae is breaking. Okay, the hyphae is breaking into small thin fragments, which are called what? Which are called oidia. Okay, and when are oidia formed? Oidia are formed under conditions of excess water, sugar, and certain salts. Okay, so hyphae breaks into numerous small thin fragments which are known as oidia. Okay, it is observed in Agaricus, and they are formed under conditions of excess water, sugar, and certain salts. A very important property of oidia is that they can multiply by budding. Okay, they are one of the very few spores that can multiply on their own. So oidia can multiply by budding. So if you have an oidia, okay, then the oidia can undergo budding to produce even more oidia. Meghna, the hyphae breaks under the conditions of excess water or sugar or certain salts. Okay, so what is the important property of oidia? So there are two important things that you have to remember. Okay, that OED are formed in conditions of excess water, sugar, or certain salts. OED can undergo budding. OED can undergo budding, and they are nothing but broken up fragments, small broken up fragments of your hyphae. Small broken up fragments of your hyphae. Okay, done. Okay, now let's move to the last spores that we have, which is your sporangiospores that you guys studied in your 10th standard also, right? So what are sporangiospores? Sporangiospores are non-motile spores which are produced inside sporangia. Okay, sporangiospores are non-motile spores produced inside sporangia. Sporangiospores are non-motile spores produced inside sporangia. They are also called endospores. They are also called endospores. Okay, and what happens is they are dispersed by wind and germinate to produce new mycelium. Example, your bread mold, that is Rhizopus or Mucor, right? So you might remember this figure from your 10th standard NCERT textbook, right? That your sporangiospores are produced in sporangia. They're also known as endospores. They are usually dispersed by wind and they germinate to produce new mycelium. Example is Rhizopus or Mucor. Okay? So is sporulation clear to everybody? Is sporulation clear to everybody? Just give me a yes. Is sporulation clear to everybody? All the different types of spores that we studied. That is your zoospores, then chlamydospores, oedia, okay, then sporangiospores. Is this clear to everybody? Okay? Awesome. Let's move forward then. Let's move to the next topic that we have. The next topic that we have is vegetative propagation. The next topic that we have is vegetative propagation. As I said, in vegetative propagation, there will be 6 methods that we'll be studying. Okay, we'll cover only 3 today. The other 3 we'll start with tomorrow. So what is vegetative propagation? So vegetative propagation is formation of new plants from vegetative parts of the plant, right? Or you can say that from non-reproductive parts of the plant, that is without using the flower of a plant. If you produce new plants, then the process is known as vegetative propagation. So it is the formation of new plants from vegetative parts of the plant, Okay. Why is this method? What are the advantages of this method? Again, if you remember your 10th standard biology, you will remember this. So what it does is it helps in producing a large number of population of clones in very short time. You can rapidly produce large number of plants in a very short amount of time. What is the another advantage? It preserves purity, resistance, and good qualities of your plants, right? So for example, right, if you have a very good rice quality, right, if you have a very good variety of rice that can survive in drought condition, right, so you would make sure that it undergoes vegetative propagation. Why vegetative propagation? Because it is a mode of asexual reproduction, and we know that in asexual reproduction, the plants that will be produced will be exact copies of the parent, right? If you make that plant undergo sexual reproduction, then that particular property might be lost. So you do not want to take the risk, and what you do is you make sure it undergoes vegetative propagation, because in vegetative propagation is a mode of asexual reproduction. In asexual reproduction, the offsprings are exact copies of the parents. So if the parent is drought resistant, all the offspring will be drought resistant also. Okay? So there are 2 types of vegetative propagation: natural and artificial. Today we'll be studying about half of natural vegetative propagation. Okay? So let's look at this. Now let's look at vegetative propagation. Natural vegetative propagation. So in natural vegetative propagation, as the name suggests, okay, the parts of the plant automatically detach and give rise to a new parent. Okay, the vegetative parts of the plant detach from the body of the mother and develop into new plants under suitable conditions. Okay, so this is very important. You have to remember that vegetative parts of the plant detach automatically and develop into new plants under suitable conditions. So what are the different parts of the plants that can be utilized? You can utilize roots, underground stems, subaerial stems, aerial stems, leaves, and turions. Today we'll cover the first three, that is roots, underground stem, and your subaerial stem. Okay, so let's start with your roots first. Now, when we talk about roots for vegetative propagation, both taproot and adventitious roots take part in vegetative propagation. It's not like vegetative propagation is only limited to one of them. Okay, both taproots and adventitious roots take part in vegetative propagation. Okay, here the definition is not that important. What is important is the examples. Please make sure you remember the examples at any cost. Definitions usually nahi puchenge. What they'll ask is examples of plants that take part in root vegetative propagation. So what are the examples? The example is Dalbergia, which is shisham, which is a type of tree from which we get wood. Then you have guava, then you have sweet potato, then you have tapioca, dahlia, and asparagus. So these are some of the examples. Make sure that you remember the examples at any cost, because they can give you a name of the plant and then they'll ask you what kind of vegetative propagation, natural vegetative propagation it undergoes. They can give you example root, stem, leaves, subaerial stems, and stuff like that. So make sure you remember the examples at any cost. Okay, so what are the examples of root vegetative propagation? There is shisham, which is the common name. The scientific name is Dalbergia. Then guava, sweet potato, tapioca, dahlia, and asparagus. So those are the examples of root vegetative propagation. Okay, now let's move to the stem vegetative propagation. Under that, the underground stem propagation. Okay, so underground stem are of 5 different types. Underground stems are of 5 different types. You have tubers, bulbs, corms, rhizomes, and suckers. Okay, very important to remember examples of each one of them. Okay, very important to remember examples of each one of them. Tubers, example is potato and artichoke. Both are these are type of vegetable that you eat. For bulbs, okay, the examples are garlic and onion. Then for corms, your examples are, okay, Amorphophallus, which is your zamikand, okay, which in some parts of India is also eaten. It is eaten in Kerala and Tamil Nadu. I don't know whether it is eaten in Karnataka or not. Then another example is Colocasia. Okay, for rhizomes, the example is banana, ginger, and turmeric. And for suckers, the example is mint and chrysanthemum. Chrysanthemum is a type of flowering plant. Okay, in the next slide, okay, so if you want to look at it, what do they look like? This is what they look like. Okay, this is what they look like. So the first one is your tuber. This one is your bulb. The second one is your bulb. Sorry about that. So the second one is your bulb. The third one is your corm. Then you have your rhizomes. And lastly, you have your suckers. All these are examples of your underground stem. So tuber is seen in potato, then bulb is seen in your onion or garlic, corm is seen in your Colocasia, and then rhizomes is seen in your ginger, and then suckers is seen in your mint or chrysanthemum. Okay, make sure that you remember examples of each one of them. Questions have been previously asked. Okay, questions have been previously asked from these. Okay, where they will give you a name of the plant and they'll ask you which one of the following underground stem is found in them. Okay, so make sure that you remember all the examples that I mentioned in the previous slide. So these are all your underground stem. Okay, so examples of sucker are beta mint and chrysanthemum. Okay, Prakriti, I'll tell you after the class. Okay, now that was your underground stem that are found within the soil. The primary function of underground stem is to store food, right? All these stems that you're seeing, their primary function is to store food which the plant can utilize later. Okay, the next one after underground stem is your subaerial stems. Subaerial means what? Thoda bahut hawa mein, right? Or just above the ground. They are also known as your creeping stem. And they are of three types. They are of three types: runners, stolen, and offset. Runners, stolen, and offset. Okay. What are the examples of runner? Examples of runner are your lawn grass, scientific name is cynodon, or cantella. Okay. Lawn grass, which is also scientific name is cynodon, and another one is cantella. So if you uproot a lawn grass, you will see that it has stems that are moving along the ground. So that is known as runners. For offsets, the examples are for stolen, the examples are strawberry and Vallisneria. For offsets, the example are strawberry and Vallisneria. And for offsets, the examples are Eichhornia, that is water hyacinth, and Pistia. So for runner, the example is your lawn grass and cantella. For your stolens, the example are strawberry and Vallisneria. And for your offset, the examples are your water hyacinth or Eichhornia or your Pistia, which is your water lettuce. Okay? What do they look like? What do they look like? This is what they look like. This is what they look like. So if you look at it, in your runner, these stems are right along the ground. The stems are right along the ground. Okay. While in your stolen, what happens is the stem rises. The stem rises from root to root. So that is the key difference between runner and stolen. In runner, the stem is right on top of the ground. While in stolen, what happens is the stem rises like an arc from root to root. And offset is usually found in your aquatic plants. Offset is usually found in your aquatic plants. Offsets are usually found in your aquatic plant. Okay, so the example for that is water hyacinth, which was also known as terror of Bengal, because water hyacinth was not naturally found in India. What they did was that they brought it from the outside because of its beautiful flower. But since it undergoes reproduction rapidly because of the production of offsets, it's very difficult to get rid of them. And they're also detrimental for the aquatic life. Why? Because what they do is that they will cover up the entire top of the aquatic water body. So as a result of that, the sunlight will not reach to the plants that are present on the floor of the aquatic body. And sunlight will also not reach to the organisms that are present in the aquatic body. Plus, they take up a lot of oxygen also, as a result of which the aquatic life does not get enough oxygen. So what is the difference between runner, stolen, and offset? By looking at them, in runner, the stems run parallelly or just on top of the ground. In stolen, the stems arcs from root to root, and then offsets are found in your aquatic plants. Offsets are found in your aquatic plants. So these are the three types of natural vegetative reproduction that I wanted to, vegetative propagation that I wanted to get through. Okay, so on that note, okay, we end today's class. That is all for today. Okay, so I hope that you guys like today's class. Just give me 2 minutes. I'll tell you guys about an interesting experiment that was conducted in 1952, I think. That I think you guys will like. Okay, so I hope that you guys like today's class. I hope that you guys are having fun. Okay, so what was the experiment that was conducted? So the experiment was called Experiment Hope. Okay, the experiment was called Experiment Hope, and it was conducted in 1950. It was conducted in 1950. Right. So what was done was that they took a beaker of water. And they filled it, with water. Obviously, they took a rat, and then they put the rat in the beaker of water, and the rat obviously tried to swim, right? And what they saw was that after 15 minutes or so, the rat stopped swimming. The rat gave up, right? And it started drowning. So what they did was that as soon as the rat was about to drown, they picked up the rat. They patted it dry, usko sukhaya. After some time, they put it back again. In the beaker of water. Can you guys guess for how long Did the rat try to swim for this time? Can you guys tell me? Can you guys guess? For how long do you think the rat tried to swim this time? Can you guys tell me? How long do you think the rat tried to swim for swim this time? Can you guys guess? How long? How long do you think the rat will? So I'm getting a lot of, some people are saying minutes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes. Some are saying 12 hours. Some are saying same time. Some is saying 1 hour. Somebody saying it didn't try. Somebody saying 1 hour. So what they saw was that, and this is something that you guys will find surprising. What they saw was that it swam, or it tried to swim for 60 hours. It tried to swim for 60 hours continuously without stopping, right? It kept on swimming for 60 hours, right? And they repeated the experiment multiple times, right? They again took a fresh rat, they again put it in a beaker of water. जैसे डूबने वाला था 15 मिनट में, they took it out, सुखाया उसे, दोबारा डाला. They again saw that all the rats were swimming for 50 plus hours, right? And some of them kept on swimming for more than 60 hours, right? And what they concluded was that the rat figured out that Madat aane wali hai. The rat held out hope that help will come, so it kept on swimming. First time it didn't know that somebody will come to help him, right? But the second time it knew that somebody would come to help him, right? So it kept on swimming, right? It held on to a hope. And that is why the experiment is known as experiment hope. Now, why am I telling this to you guys? The reason why I'm telling you this, guys, because similarly, over the next 1 year or so, there will be moments where you will, feel like giving up, okay? Where you'll feel like giving up because you will think that the odds are too much against you. It's too difficult, NEET bahut mushkil hai, nahi ho raha, chhod raha hu, right? And for that, I would say that always hold out hope, because hope allows you to push your boundaries, right? The rat didn't know that it could swim for 60 hours, but once it held out hope, it could swim for 60 hours. So if you hold out hope, then whatever your boundaries are, you will see that you can easily surpass them. Okay, boundaries are what you set for yourself. Okay, boundaries are not set by somebody else. Okay, you decide your own boundaries. So whenever you feel like you're in a bad position, okay, where you think that everything is stacked against you, okay, hold out hope, because that will keep you pushing. And the more you'll keep pushing, you'll see that you can do this also, you can do this also, right? You can do this also, right? So if you think that मुझसे एक दिन में 20 से ज़्यादा physics के questions नहीं होते, right? Hold out hope. You'll see that, you think you can't do more than 20. That is why you're stuck at 20. But the more you will do, okay, the more positive you are, the more you can push yourself, right? So that is what I wanted to share. Okay, so I hope that really helped you guys. Again, it is nice teaching you guys. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Okay, thank you very much for your time. Okay, bye guys, take care. Bye bye.